Lemon Amiga Predseda. A Playguide video review. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hello everybody once again to another Lemon Amiga Playguide and review. This time we'll be checking out Populous. This was developed by Bullfrog Productions and released by Electronic Arts in 1989. The game begins with a simple scenario showing the red team and the blue team out developing each other, and this is the end of the game. You can see all of the staff listed on the screen. Of course, Peter Molyneux designed and created this, and Glenn Corpse as well. And the graphics were also created by Glenn Corpse and Dan Wheeler. Additional help by Sean Cooper and Andy Jones. So this is a Peter Molyneux production, and sound by Dave Hanlon, who I've never heard of. Music idea by Les Edgar. Title music by Rob Hubbard, who was a legend on the Commodore 64, and apart from Indy 500 and games like that, you won't really hear much about Rob Hubbard on the Amiga. This is probably one of Rob's greatest scores, and it's very theatrical. You can see now that we've now built a huge castle, and now the armies are fighting against each other, and night against night, and that's pretty good to see. A lot of players didn't even notice this on the introduction sequence, because basically, well, it does carry on for a bit, and most players simply press the left mouse button, because this is a mouse button driven game, and they simply got on with it. We now burn those castles, which I'm not sure appears in the actual game itself, and then we get to hear that great music. After that we get to the title sequence, where we can select a tutorial, custom, or a conquest, and if you select custom you get to press some, I think, F keys and keyboard keys, and you get to plant down your own environment and plant down your own people. We won't really be covering that in this guide. There's also the tutorial, which we won't be going through either. That starts off, and you can see here we are, we're the blue team. By clicking around we can also see the red team as well. A landscape has appeared. Tons of different buttons have appeared as well on the screen. And we're going to have to work out what all of those buttons do and how to control the game from here. On the right you can see various options that we can do to change the aggression in the training mode, and the speed of conquest as well, speed of the rate of development, and maybe even speed of the game itself. You can see right on the bottom we're actually in pause mode, and the Zs means that we're asleep. If we click on those Zs, it means we'll unpause the game, and finally in this tutorial we can get to build stuff and plant stuff down, and we can figure out what everything does. And I'm wielding what's known as the papal magnet at the moment. If I drop that down, it should mean that all our settlers build just a little bit quicker, and that gives them some morale, and they will spread on their own without us having to do anything. And this being a god sim, we don't interact with those entirely individually. And you can see also there are further options where you can play a 1 or a 2 player game. You can enter paint map mode. Again, we can paint the map and create things. You can play as good as evil. You can even play Amiga versus Amiga mode. And that basically gives you a potted adventure on a disc. So you can surrender the game as well. You can load and save from here, but the conquest is basically the campaign. So the first mission, mission 0, conquest. It's a grassy plainy area and there's nothing going on. Build land, swamps are bottomless, water is fatal. So we've got all of the special abilities, the enemy has none, and population 3 starts off with at the beginning of the game. Now we'll move on to this Genesis scenario. We can see we are always the blue guys unless we swap that over in the menus, and you can see that we occupy the very top centre of the map, and there is a huge mountain in it which is preventing the enemies from moving across, and the enemies actually spawn in at least 2 different locations on the map. And you can see there are various things. The first thing, well, we can reduce this mountain, and that will hopefully help us build, because the aim of this game is to build stuff. You can see various icons on the top, and those are abilities that we can earn by moving the mana bar up to them. We can ignore those for most of the early parts of the game, because we'll have to build up the mana first of all in order to earn them, and that's not really going to be possible, especially if we use the right mouse button to level down that mountain. So you can see the up and down arrows, that just means build stuff. That is the ability that we've got at the moment. It is possible to run out of mana, so we can't build the landscape. We can't build houses, but we can build the landscape. And this bar at the bottom basically means we can navigate around it, or we can click on the map area, and that should take us to that exact location. So you can see right at the beginning of the game it's not very flat, and houses will build in real time as long as the world around them is flat. And if it's not flat, we can even turf them out of their homes as well. But you can see by levelling that out, hopefully the houses develop into a stronger unit. By levelling that out completely, it builds into a small tower, and that means it's a lot stronger, and that means unfortunately it's going to take longer for the population to move out of there, because the population will only spread once a dweller basically breeds and the offspring then exit that home, they'll leave home, and that means that they'll set up home somewhere else. If it's in a big castle, it will take them a long time to fill it before they leave home, and I think if it's a major castle, maybe it'll take 7 occupants before one of them leaves home. So you can see buy magnet there. We can buy a papal magnet once we can afford to do that on the mana bar. That will drop down some kind of cross, and you can see these icons. You can go to the magnet, that tells people to go there. Any spare citizens, they can build stuff, they can go to the leader or fight, but you can ignore those for the beginning of the game, just like this, because we don't really need to go to any of those locations earlier on. And you can see all of the upgrades that we can buy as well. We can ignore all of those buttons earlier on in the game because we can't afford them right now, so we can just ignore them. So these are the go-to buttons for the screen options. We can go to the magnet leader, we can go to the knight, and we can go to a fight, but we don't need those this early in the game, so we can ignore those as well. So that's the heads up display all covered. We can ignore every single button of it this early in the game. All we need to do is to build, And the experts say if you build like this and get 3 clicks going and then simply de-click away, then that's a better use of mana and it builds up faster than if you're just building things block by block, one by one, like I'm doing at the moment. I've no idea, but you can see that isn't moving up to a castle until we clear that entire area around it. And you can see people wandering around. So again, building out into the ocean simply takes a number of double clicks to get that to build up, and then single clicks knock that down so that it's kind of a flat land. So at the moment, this is the trainee level, this is level 0, this is Genesis. So the aim of this game earlier on is to simply flatten the land out, or at least it can be an aim in this game, and flatten the land out so that you can get some occupiers going, and then you can take over the enemy by what I call civilization population expansion. And that just means that when you can afford to go out and fight, if you've got enough citizens behind us and a good enough population area all built up and strong, it means we can go out and fight the enemy using knights. And that's the traditional way to beat this game, so let's go through that way first of all. And the castles are now building up, so now let's extend ourselves all the way out into the ocean. And the quirk about this game is you can only extend on an area that has a population, or somebody walking upon it at least. So we can only build and raise and lower land as long as there's somebody on the screen, otherwise we won't be able to do it. You can see I'm speeding up the footage as we flatten the area and simply extend ourselves. And the more population we get, the more mana that we get. So you can see that mana bar now points towards different things on the top of the screen, and it's pointing towards the volcano at the moment. That means we can afford any of the options underneath the volcano, so we can buy a swamp, we can buy the night, and we can also buy the earthquake as well. And I think we can only ever buy one papal magnet, that's the cross you can see at the end. And now, so let's create one, let's put it down, and I think that will, well, let's try and create another one. Yeah, we can move the existing one, but it doesn't look like we can create 2 papal magnets. But if we place that in the middle of a castle, then what will that do? Well, you can see, well, we're getting ready with the volcano at the moment. Let's just check out the enemy quickly. You can see all the things that we can buy: flood, Armageddon, night, swamp, volcano. So what do we want in this case? Well, the volcano. That basically creates a rocky area on the map so that people can't build upon it, and that destroys their availability of mana to fight against me. But luckily on this level 0 we don't have that to worry about, because the enemy can't build upgrades anyway. So you can see we can build a swamp, and we can put that down on enemy land, and if any of the enemy fall into that swamp, that depletes their civilization population. And those are represented by the bars next to the shield in the top corner. So you can see I've got a big blue bar, so I've got quite a lot of population, and the enemy's only got a small red bar, so that means that they've got half as much population as we have at the moment. So let's just carry on expanding and building, and the citizens can't do it themselves. They can't dig a hole in the ground and go to a leader, go to knight, go to a fight, and that's basically our leader that we've gone to at the moment. So we can zoom in on wherever they are using those buttons, and our leader spreads basically karma around to everybody, and very happy, and they're very strong. But you can also use the leader and turn those into a knight and be later on, and the leader will also sometimes follow a path directly to the enemy, and if you follow the leader sometimes you can build a path, and that will naturally expand your area. Let's put the papal magnet down. That gives everybody a nice boost in morale, and you can see the enemy has put its destination marker directly on top of my papal magnet. What does that mean? Well, that means the enemy leader will have a shield in the form of that symbol is a bit like a horned god, horned devil kind of a thing. And that means the enemy leader, here he is, will now be moving towards our papal magnet, or at least that position that it's marked on the map. Now if we click on the knight button, we can change our leader into a knight, and then they will fight. Because he isn't a knight, hopefully we can defeat the enemy's leader, and that's one way to do it. The knight will now chase after the enemy leader, hopefully, and let's see if he wins that battle. Now that we've bridged the gap to the enemy island, that means the enemy can pour through, and one knight can take care of quite a lot of the enemy, and we can also extend the land as well, so that turfs them out. If you are facing a knight against a building, that's obviously reinforced, and if it's a knight against a normal guy, they obviously aren't. So once you've got a knight on the go, they can survive a number of attacks. And so I think maybe, well, it depends on their strength, and we'll talk about strength a bit later on. This is just a basic knight that we've created, and we've forced everybody to go to the papal magnet, and then we've sent a knight out into the field. We'll check that out a bit later on. You can see the knight is surviving quite a lot of these attacks, and our citizens are now exploding, so that means any spare citizens will go to the fight. You can see go to the fight button is highlighted, and that is the build button. That means we'll go back to building huts, and so we've now changed it so they can build huts. So you can see now the enemy's got a new leader, and our knight will simply wander around at random trying to get to the main enemy base, which is all the way into the middle of the island. What we can do is use up some mana and simply create some land around there and kick them out before they are faced with the knight, and that means the knight should get through them like butter. You can see the knight is facing no problems so far, and as long as one of our units is on the screen, we can use that trick to build a hill and kick them out. So let's zero in on the knights, and this is our papal magnet. And so let's just, well, there's no point doing much with that at the moment. All we need to do is to kill lots of people, and once we've got a knight on the job, you can see how easy that is, just like the settlers. And on this very first level, the enemy don't create knights because they don't have any special abilities, so you can use one knight to mop up. And so let's zoom in on that knight. He's not going to last forever. And so let's just kick out all those people. You can see I'm building the pyramids now as that knight wanders through that territory, and raise up and kick them all out. So that's definitely one method I've found to help you beat the game a lot easier, and it doesn't take much mana either to keep raising up the land and kick them out. Later on in the game, I think we're stuck for another night, so we need to move the papal magnet again. Let's put it in the middle of a huge dwelling, if we can do that, if it's possible to do that. Where is it at the moment? It's down here. So, well, we can force everybody to go to the papal magnet here by clicking on that button. That means they'll all rush to it. As soon as the first one hits it, it will now become the new leader. And so that's independent of knights. You can see the leader's strength, and the more people rush to the leader and go into that home, the more they will combine with that leader and give the leader more strength. And if we force everybody to go to the papal magnet like this, including the leader, that should mean as soon as the leader touches that, he'll rank up, and the leader will now wait and hang around, and as soon as they touch the leader, it should mean that the leader's strength, you can see it's going up in orange, it should go up to yellow, I think, when the leader is strong enough to turn into a really strong knight. So let's encourage all of the spare citizens to go to the magnet and touch him, and you saw it flashing on yellow there, and I think you can click on, well, he's got a crossbow at the moment. That isn't very good because that isn't a strong armament. That will also go up. The stronger they are, it will move into a sword icon, and that will go through various different forms depending on how strong they are. Unfortunately, they don't wield bows and arrows in the field. The knight always carries a sword. You can see we've already got our knight. He's carrying a flail, I noticed, in the top corner, and he's still busy out there in the field. But it always helps in in some scenarios to get ready to build another knight, and that means that we've got a few on the go. So let's return back to our papal magnet, or at least our leader, and you can see the first bar is yellow, the second one is completely to the top. So hopefully that will mean he's strong enough to turn into a knight. And you can see he's got the shield on him. That means the shield in the middle of the crosshairs. That basically tells us that that's what we're focused on the shield in the top corner. So now we are the knight. He's got a club for some reason. I've no idea why. It should have at least ranked up to the sword. But he's got a club, and you can see the other one's got a flail. So he's in yellow, so he's strong enough, and he's going to go around and kick out some of the enemy. And you can see our citizens are now virtually all the way to the top, and the enemy has virtually got only a few. When there are too many of our own citizens on the screen, a monster will appear and gobble them up, and that's interesting. There are a number of different monsters, and of course Peter Molyneux went on to black and white, where you control a different monster and you basically control a Populous type game. So that's one objective of black and white. You don't have to build the monsters, I don't think. And so that's another Peter Molyneux game. So this is the end of the first level. This is just me messing around with knights and sending them in there. And you can also press the Armageddon button as well. That will get rid of all of the buildings on the entire map, and it will send all of the population out. All of the population will then gather in the centre of the map, and they'll fight each other in a huge big fight and a huge civil war. And all the dots on the small map you can see start piling up, and because we've got so many citizens, it shouldn't take any hardship at all to beat the map, simply on a strength of numbers war, and it won't take long before the enemy to disappear. Unfortunately, if you use the Armageddon option, you won't get any bonus score for doing that, and it's the last possible option that you should click on, because as soon as the enemy's dead, then they're dead, that's it. So we won the battle, and I won 77 battles versus the enemy's 20, and it doesn't give us any bonus for the knights or the towns or the castles because we chose Armageddon, unfortunately, so you don't get anything for that whatsoever, but you do get a bonus score, and this is how the score breaks down. You also get 50,000 for beating the game, as well as all those others, 50,000 for triggering Armageddon as well. Well done, mortal, you conquered Genesis. Now battle at Skaucrumet. So now it gives us a new password, and it gives us a new variety type. It's now the desert, and you can see enemy reactions are very poor, and land is built on people, the swamps are shallow, and water is harmful. And floods, well now he can do floods but not much else, so the game increasing the difficulty. And of course this is one of those games with 9,999 levels, or infinite levels, or 2.4 billion levels, because this is a procedurally drawn game, and every level is drawn with a seed, and that seed plots everything out on the map. And as long as that seed is exactly the same, it should draw out the level exactly the same. And so those seeds have been changed and saved up as basically a campaign mode, but you can design your own seeds in the game as well. So you can see right at the start, this is the second level. We can't build on areas with trees, unfortunately, although I have seen citizens cutting the trees down. You don't get an animation of that, they would simply disappear. So I might be reminded of the shepherd at this point, growing trees and everything like that. It isn't part of this game, unfortunately. This is simply growing people. So you can see here we are on the second level again. I've put the magnet in the middle of a stronghold, so that means the enemy will think twice about attacking it, and from there we can lure people to goals to the papal magnet. There is, he's now a leader, and then goals to the papal magnet. So let's leave it on there, and you can see we've just enough mana to buy ourselves a knight. We can then click on the knight button and buy ourselves a knight. We can go off and attack the enemy. And so let's just move the magnet. If you press the question mark icon, we can now select our leader. We can see him building up on the map. If it doesn't do it automatically, we can prompt it to do that. So now we can see he's got a flail, and he's obviously building up in strength. I'm just waiting to see if he gets a sword and something like that. I think they can only build up to a certain strength, unfortunately. And everything's now in the green, so let's select him, and now by clicking on the build soldier, build knight in this case, we can now send him out. He will now make a beeline straight for the enemy. If you can't get there because of water, then he'll expect you to build him a bridge to the enemy, because that's where he's going, and you can't stop him from doing that. So I'm basically reinforcing things behind, and he will hop on corners and get across to islands that way. And now he's made his way to the first enemy. He will probably, well, sometimes he'll attack the weaker, sometimes he'll ignore the weaker enemies, but anything that's directly on his path, he'll definitely attack them and kick them out. And you can see another way to do it is simply to make potholes in the floor. That means the enemy will be unable to build on that land unless they personally build upon it, which they definitely do on later levels. But simply creating a number of potholes means that they can't build up a civilization, and that means we can defend the frontier. You can see everybody building up now and building up into a nice strong knight. We can send maybe 2, 3, 4 knights out in the field at once, as long as we've got that power. And so let's speed up that footage. And on some levels, definitely the first level, you can take away the ground until it turns into water. So you can simply take away the enemy's land instead of building upon it, and that drowns everybody and decreases the amount of land that they've got. You then walk over it with a knight until they haven't got any land at all and sink everybody. And that's definitely one way to conquer the game. And you can build volcanoes and things like that above the land. So that's another battle. I won it using knights. I've got 1 knight remaining. I completed 32 towns and 17 castles. I've got a score of that, and I didn't use Armageddon. I think the more you use the special items like the volcanoes, the more you gain the score for using them. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. This is battle number 8, and it goes through the battles in a kind of a jumping order. The more score you get on the lower levels, the more it puts you onto the higher ones. So if you get a massive score on level 1, it might put you onto level 10 next. And if you get a really measly score, it might put you onto level 3. So it depends how good you are at the game as to how far you get through it and how quickly. And experts can basically skip through the training levels at the beginning, and they can get through to battling the enemy towards the end, which does turn into mayhem. So you can see you can turn those on and off as well. I have no idea what that does to the score, and I don't think you can change those on a fixed scenario like this one, but you can definitely change those if it's got a highlighted button next to it, and change it to Amiga versus Amiga and things like that. And so paint map option as well. That's definitely, are we tempted to use the paint map option? There's a 2-player mode there, and 1-player mode is selected at the moment. And restart this map, and I can even move to the next map as well if I really can't be bothered to try this one, or I can restart it, or I can surrender the game from here as well. Then the only option is to try it again, and so you can surrender the game but then try it again as well. Let's have a look at those game options. Water is harmful, swamps is shallow, you can build up and down, you can build near people. So that's an option as well, build near people and not build near people. So you can see we can switch those on and off. We can even have a no modem cable link as well if you have an old fashioned 2-player null modem cable connection. And I've no idea how that works with a null modem cable, but you can use that with an internet connection, with some kind of, I think, serial board internet connection, going back in time with that kind of thing anymore. I used to know all about it, but now I can't. So you can see we're now in paint mode. We can create boulders and change them to a different type. We can plant people down, we can plant people of different colours down, we can plant trees down as well, and we can basically go over the map creating whatever we like in this paint mode. And so we can create any scenario, and we can, well, I don't know how to change the level design unfortunately, but a load of keys that you can find in the manual, it is possible to do that. And then you can simply play that from the point we left off. There they are. And now let's move on. There are various scenarios, so there's a nice snow effect. If you want to pretend you're playing Christmas Populous, then you can see everything's covered with a nice snow effect on the branches and the rocks and everything. And some of the small rocks you can get rid of, but some of the big rocks, all you can do to get rid of them is to sink them into the ground. And that means getting rid of them, turning that into water and build them up all over again. So some of the landscape is definitely build uponable and some of it isn't. So let's move on to another scenario. This is what I like to call the hell realm, or the hell scenario. We're now stuck in the middle of a volcano, it looks like. So in order to continue the game, let's fast forward. This was recorded during the Super League competition on the 17th of March 2024. I'm now using an all-30 CPU. We're playing Badacon, which is battle number 16. The enemy can drop swamps. Swamps are shallow and water is harmful. So this is level 16 Badacon. And so you're about to see real-time footage of me exploring the level for, I think, maybe one of the early times that I played it in the Amiga Games competition, and this is me trying to beat it. So what can we do from the start? This is a brand new level. What I like to do is to figure out where the people are and start building straight away a nice flat area, and then you can start building the population up, but also a nice defensive force in case the enemy swamp the area, and the enemy will find it much more difficult if they attack castles than if they attack these small forts. You can see the small round cylindrical forts, and those remind me of small builds up hill fort types of things. And you can see the small houses as well, everything built of stone, it appears, in this game, or at least the decent houses. If they attack those, then the people just crumble, and that's a 50-50 chance. Sometimes you'll win, sometimes the enemy will win. So it's better to stack the defence in your favour, and then at least it gives us some kind of attack manoeuvre. And you can see I'm attacking at the moment by building up the land and connecting that bridge between us and the enemy with the white dots on the map, and the enemy is the red. So I've started off early. I'm now bridging that gap and making it into a nice flat area so that hopefully the population can expand. So where is the papal magnet in this case? You can see, well, everything's surrounded by fire, so everything will be burnt if we lower it into the fire, and there is gives us a powerful magnet from the start, so all we need to do is to get some kind of good guy on the screen so that we can destroy the landscape. And now we can use that opportunity. That's a clue to what we need to do. We need to expand it in this direction, and as soon as our good guys find the magnet, they'll then pick it up and they'll take it towards the front lines. And what that does is increases the morale, but also it means it's easier for us to get knights out to the front lines, because you can only spawn knights where there is a leader, and you spawn the leader by touching the PayPal magnet. So that's how that works. And so let's now, you can see loads of dead trees in the way, and we'll have to get rid of those the easy or the hard way in order to build through this land and to try and flatten it out. So there are different scenarios in the game, and winter and desert and grassland and hell and fire and swamps and all this kind of stuff. So this could have been bordering on a fantasy game. In fact, it does border on a fantasy game because, as I said, there are monsters in the game that destroy the landscape and kill people. So that just basically means if the game is trying to generate a population and the population buffer is already full, what that will do is it will go around murdering itself in order to maintain the population by unleashing some kind of a monster. At the moment what I'm doing is I'm building a nice corridor, and if the enemy is forced to run down a corridor which is full of castles, it should mean that they have a more difficult time getting towards my main units and getting through the battlefront, because in this game I like to maintain a battlefront. I don't like the enemies to pour through it too much. And you can do various things to do that. You can basically pincer them into a tight corridor like this, and the enemy will rarely build land where it can simply walk citizens in a straight line. You see the enemy is simply building small huts at the moment, and we've got big castles. So that means we stand more chance of winning the battles. And then when that happens, we'll take over that area and we'll resettle it. You can see the enemy trying again. And as long as we maintain the area, it should mean we can build, and look at that, we can even destroy the enemies as well and create those potholes, like I said, to get rid of them. Or we can simply create a hill and build a massive hill and get rid of them that way. It will take the enemy a lot of mana to destroy a hill, but it will also cost us quite some as well. You can see we're already to volcano level of mana already, and so all we need to do is, well, we can volcano the entire island if we really want to do that, but you won't really get much score, I don't think, for doing that. But you can see simply building a corridor means hopefully we can extend and build a battlefront of castles just like that. Now the castle's built, we can return to the opposite side and we can get them again, kind of a pincer movement, and attack the enemy. Most of the enemy is spread out over the highlands, you can see to the left, and some of them have built themselves a city down in the lowlands. So if I pour all my people in there, and it's pretty similar on the citizens front at this point. And look at that, some of my guys. So let's upgrade that building straight away so they have something to fight with. And sometimes that's a good measure to concentrate on things individually so that everybody's up to some kind of a standard. And as long as your standard is higher than the enemy's standard, then that's what you need to worry about. And when the enemy are wandering around, it doesn't matter about the castles behind them. You can see this is the enemy leader, So what can we do? Well, we can drown the guy, we can build on the guy, we can send a knight after him, we can let him deplete himself by attacking our guys, send him against castle after castle and weaken ourselves and let him take over the realm. So he took over that castle, I got rid of it straight away, simply using the potholing technique, and rather layering all those holes on the ground. We can let him rampage through our territory if we really want to do that, and settle the battle the hard way. Or, as I say, we can set a knight on him. The enemy leader is many times stronger than the other enemy who's just wandering around, and the enemy leader acts basically like a knight. So we'll need a light to face him, and sometimes the enemy leader is heading towards the papal magnet, and that's one easy way to find out where they're going, is to find the marker on the map. But you can see I'm having a very difficult time at the moment facing the enemy leader versus citizens, and I should be rushing to build something by now. You can see I'm trying to drown him, and that's entirely possible to do that, but this isn't the place to do it, unfortunately. Eventually he's going to run out of momentum and he'll eventually die. So I'm just wondering why I'm hanging around at the moment. I think it's because we get a penalty for building knights in the Lemon Amiga Games competition, and everything that you build, well, gives you some score. So I think we did it for the lowest score possible. So that's why I'm not building a knight at the moment. Otherwise you're probably screaming at the TV, why aren't you building a knight to get rid of him? And it looks like we've got rid of him anyway. So that's why I'm not using the upgrades on this particular run, simply because I'm not allowed to, and that means it costs a score. So I think this was a least scoring challenge or something like that, and we got away with it and everybody got to play the game, and it was very difficult trying to score again like this, but it does give you a score in the game. So we finally worked it out that it is possible to score it somehow. So you can see I'm building up the battle lines, and if you wanted to, you could literally score out a valley between me and the enemy to keep them in their place, and literally make sure that nobody gets over it, like Wad's Dyke. But this isn't the Stone Age or the Middle Ages, even though everybody's dressed like a caveman. You can see they are building castles, Norman type stone castles. So that means that they are either from 2000 BC, according to like how they're dressed, or they're from after the Norman conquest 1066. So only 3,000 years apart there. And they've got, well, they've got some kind of flag, and they've got some kind of identity. So this is me trying to play the game. You can see I can fry the enemy simply by throwing those into the fire at this early stage, and the enemy will rebuild itself on later levels. And I've noticed that you can't kill the enemy leader once you get very far in the game, because if you try to do that you can't, because the enemy will simply build land under their own leader and save them. No matter how much you try to drop those into the fire, the swamp, the enemy AI will simply build land under them, and it can do that and build land a bit later on, a bit more powerfully than it's doing at the moment. And of course with these simple early levels this early in the game, obviously, well, it's not too difficult. So P2 Molyneux moved on to Powermonger and Syndicate, and Glencorp started out with Fusion, I think, which is supposed to be a parallax game on the Amiga, and Druid 2 as well, they both worked on that. And of course Rob Hubbard worked on Centurion as well, the Roman game that we've seen already, and Indy 500, and this game was made using Dev Pack 2, Highsoft's Dev Pack 2, and that was an assembler language which coded in machine code. Dev Pack 2 was available for the Commodore 64 and the ZX Spectrum and CPC and the ST as well as the Amiga. I'm taking the enemy on simply by population of numbers, so it won't be long before now we complete this game, and I haven't used virtually any of the upgrades at all. No knights and no swamps and no volcanoes. I'm simply turfing the enemy out and using a citizen's conquest to take over the entire land in the name of the people. We're just taking it all over, one by one, field by field, person by person. We're kicking them out, we're taking it over. So that leads us on to those scores, and there are a ton of scores for this game, and we'll just read out a few. Dato magazine gave this the lowest score with epoxy 80%, which is still very good. Lemon Amiga currently is 81, Amiga Joker gave it 85, Amiga Computing gave this 87, Amiga Format gave this 89, Amiga User International gave this 90%, Zap gave it 94, CU gave it 94, The One gave it 95, CMVG gave it 96, and Ace as well gave it 96%. So I think Svenska also gave it 100%, but let's just take the scores that we've got and average that out at 9 out of 10. I think most of the difficulty in this game lies with the complicated interface, and if they put most of these or all of the buttons on drop down menus, like for example the drop down menu for the power ups that we can choose, a drop down menu for moving the camera, a drop down menu for all those options as well, then all we needed was a basic arrow box in the bottom corner and maybe the shield information again in the top corner in the map, but it would have meant that all of this game area could have been expanded. You can see on the original cover art it shows the game area breaking out of the screen, and that just gives away the fact that there isn't enough screen area in the game to appreciate it, and definitely it could have done with a bigger screen area, something like Powermonger achieved later on. So this was a format, this was the template. This inspired John Hare with his Sensible Soccer series, and it created basically megalomania from this, and it inspired tons of games with small guys walking around the screen, so it was definitely an inspiration. I think the interface puts people off, but if you can get over that, and you can figure out what you're meant to do, and then just get on with it, then it's actually a pretty straightforward game. And actually the more you get into it, it gets slightly harder and harder with every try, so maybe there is good replay value. I never really got into it, but as a game I can definitely give this on a measly side 7 out of 10, and as a pioneer of the genre, basically it's 10 out of 10. So thank you very much, we'll see you again in another one sometime soon.
Or paralyzed, isolation, immigration, frustration all over the nation. We've been wasting most of our time talking about things, and that's no sign. Recognize the advice, it's more than only an exercise. Remember of the world so far away, where people stay and pray every day. They have their hopes, they have their chance to pray for peace and tolerance. Remember of pastime paradise, a system without any compromise. Let me say we can find a way, stand up for the rules and pray.